There comes a time in life when you grasp that the hostility aimed at you has very little connection to your actual deeds and is far more rooted in the hidden inner world of other individuals. You might puzzle over why a friend suddenly becomes aloof, why a coworker starts to undermine your position, or why someone who once held you in high regard now harbors resentment toward your presence. Initially, you could assume the blame rests with you, that you committed an error or stumbled somewhere along your journey. However, the reality is frequently far more intricate and concealed. They are not responding to what you do. They are responding to the shadow within themselves that they have consistently avoided confronting. The human mind is not simply a domain of brightness and clarity. Every person carries a shadow within them, a hidden storehouse of rejected qualities, disowned aspirations, deep-seated shame and unacknowledged fears. These represent the aspects of their own being that individuals are unable to face. Instead of integrating these parts, they suppress them into the unconscious. Nevertheless, this shadow never truly vanishes. It remains heavy and silent, patiently awaiting the perfect trigger to call it forth. And that trigger, more often than not, is another person. You may effectively embody what someone else has denied within themselves. Perhaps your self-assurance highlights the insecurity they are unwilling to acknowledge. It could be that your discipline exposes the laziness they have kept hidden. Maybe your compassion serves as a stark reminder of their own cruelty, or your sense of freedom reveals the restraints they have willingly placed upon themselves. When this dynamic occurs, they do not truly see you. They perceive their own shadow reflected in you, and that is what they despise. Hatred, envy, and deep-seated resentment are frequently nothing more than projections of the unclaimed facets of their own identity. This explains why people can treat you as an adversary, even if you have never caused them harm. They initiate conflict not because of your specific actions, but because your very existence disrupts the illusion they rely on. You become the mirror that forces them to see who they are, and that reflection is unbearable. Rather than confronting their own internal darkness, they try to eliminate the mirror. They speak critically of you, attempt to sabotage you, or distance themselves, operating under the false belief that by removing you, they can also remove the shadow. Yet the shadow follows them relentlessly, constantly whispering, waiting, and demanding recognition. Grasping this fundamental dynamic changes everything. It enables you to stop taking the hostility personally. When you perceive the situation clearly, you realize they are not truly struggling against you. They are struggling against themselves. They are not repelled by your core nature, but by the portion of their own core nature they have suppressed and rejected. You have simply become the stage upon which their inner turmoil is being outwardly projected. Consider the individual who mocks acts of kindness. Beneath that mockery often lies a shadow filled with unhealed emotional wounds stemming from neglect and a desperate yearning for the tenderness they never received. Think about the person who looks down upon confidence. Concealed beneath their antagonism is a shadow suffocated by self-doubt, an extremely fragile self-image where another person's strength is felt as a personal insult. Ponder the individual who cannot tolerate the freedom of others. Their shadow is weighed down by the chains of fear and compliance, a desperate, stifling need for external validation. When you embrace and stand in your own light, you inevitably bring their darkness into sharp focus. And many people would much rather direct the blame toward you than engage in self-reflection. This is precisely why the shadow is so hazardous. It successfully convinces people that the flaws they detest in others are genuinely real, when in fact they are merely a reflection of their own internal state. It is inherently easier to launch an attack externally than to acknowledge an internal issue. It is simpler to criticize the achievements of another person than to admit one's own passivity. It is more comfortable to condemn someone's authenticity than to face one's own fabricated identity. However, you must also recognize that the shadow is not exclusively lodged within others. It resides within you too. Just as you inadvertently trigger unease in other people, others also trigger unease within you. The particular qualities you despise, the people who consistently irritate you, and the specific behaviors you mock, all of these can be strong indicators pointing toward your own unacknowledged shadow. To deny this reality is to live in a state of blindness, perpetually blaming and forever projecting. To clearly see it, conversely, is to commence the process of integration, the profound effort of achieving internal harmony with the less visible, darker aspects of your being. The shadow within other individuals will silently continue its operation, shaping their judgments, distorting their perceptions of reality, and directing their animosity. They may never realize that you are not, in fact, their enemy, but rather their mirror. They might never fully grasp that what they intensely dislike in you is the unhealed internal wound in themselves. Their personal struggle may persist in concealment. Their projection may remain unacknowledged, and their hostility may appear unexplainable. But if you can see this clearly, you will no longer be misled by external appearances. You will instinctively know that beneath the facade of hatred, beneath the outburst of envy, and beneath the impenetrable wall of rejection, there is a shadow that adamantly refuses to be observed. And it is that shadow that is speaking through them, not their conscious self. Authenticity stands as one of the most disarming forces a human being is capable of embodying. To be truly authentic means living without the persistent necessity of wearing masks, speaking with a voice that is uniquely one's own and not merely borrowed, and acting in direct alignment with one's internal moral compass. However, despite how liberating authenticity feels to the person who embraces it, it often triggers opposition, antagonism, and even intense hatred in others. This is because authenticity is not merely a state of being. It acts as a mirror that immediately exposes falsehood. And when you fully step into your authentic self, you inadvertently challenge the deep-seated illusions that other people depend upon for their psychological survival. Many individuals conduct their lives from behind various masks. They meticulously construct palatable identities, adopt roles that guarantee approval, and establish personas that serve as a shield against potential rejection. These masks function as a form of armor against the world, elaborate disguises carefully maintained to keep their deepest insecurities safely hidden. But the mere presence of an authentic person fundamentally destabilizes that armor. It immediately reveals the fragility and weakness of the mask. It causes the carefully constructed identity to feel flimsy, empty, and impermanent. This, ultimately, is why authenticity is frequently perceived as a significant threat. When you are genuinely authentic, you implicitly remind others of what they are failing to be. You bring to mind the compromises they have made, the vital truths they have actively suppressed, and the various roles they have had to play simply to fit in and belong. Your presence becomes a silent form of confrontation. They do not consciously hear you declare you are not real. Yet something deep within their unconscious mind registers this message. It registers it as an imminent danger, and danger automatically activates a strong defense mechanism. That defense frequently manifests as rejection, harsh criticism, or utter contempt directed toward the one who simply possesses the courage to live honestly. This explains why authenticity can sometimes be a profoundly isolating experience. You may wonder why certain people withdraw, why others become cold and distant, or why some subtly undermine your presence. It is not always purely due to who you are, but rather because of the way your authenticity fundamentally disrupts their established illusion. To them, you become intolerable, not because of any specific harm you have inflicted, but because your way of being challenges the perceived stability of the roles they desperately cling to. Consider how deeply unsettling it is to encounter an individual who firmly refuses to conform. Their act of refusal reminds you of your own history of compliance. Think about the person who speaks the truth openly when everyone else has opted for silence. Their inherent courage implicitly highlights your own fear, whether they consciously intend it or not. Ponder the individual who lives completely unapologetically, whose life choices clearly reflect freedom instead of a constant search for approval. Their freedom inevitably emphasizes the constraints around your own decision-making process. Authenticity, by its very nature, awakens deep discomfort. It compels people to look inward, and many are simply not prepared to confront what they might observe. However, authenticity should not be confused with arrogance. It is not rebellion undertaken for the sake of rebellion. It is a state of alignment. It is the simple action of existing as you truly are, without any distortion or pretense. Yet this very simplicity is what grants it its immense power. A mask requires constant effort to maintain. A lie needs continuous reinforcement to hold up. A fabricated image demands unending energy, but authenticity demands nothing at all. It simply flows, stands firm, and breathes. And this quality of a faultless presence exposes the exhausting effort others are pouring into sustaining their illusions. This is why some people will quietly resent the authentic individual. They may mock them, labeling them as naive or intensely self-absorbed. They will levy accusations of arrogance or eccentricity against them. These reactions are mere defense mechanisms, strategic ways to diminish the perceived threat without having to initiate personal change. Because to truly accept the authenticity of another person means having to question one's own inauthenticity, and that demands a level of courage that most people do not yet possess. It is far easier to scorn the person who embodies the truth than to face the metaphorical prison of one's own self-deception. Authenticity also poses a significant threat to established power structures. Entire systems, whether they be families, workplaces, or even communities, are constructed upon foundations of conformity, silence, and obedience. They frequently rely on specific roles being performed and certain scripts being rigidly followed. The person who boldly rejects the script, who breaks free from the assigned role, instantly becomes a disruptive force. They expose the inherent fragility of the entire system. They provide proof that the role is not an absolute necessity, and the script is not an unchangeable law. And those individuals who depend on the stability of the system will often unfairly designate the authentic person as the problem, when in reality, it is their authenticity that is merely revealing the underlying problem. However, authenticity does more than simply provoke hostility. It simultaneously awakens a deep internal longing. Even those who openly resent authenticity feel a stirring desire for it. They see in you the vivid possibility of personal freedom. They sense in your demeanor the courage they themselves lack. They may resort to attacking you, but underlying that attack is often profound envy, a painful, unspoken recognition of the potential they have buried within their own soul. Your presence serves as a harsh reminder of their unlived life, of the self they willingly sacrificed to meet external expectations. And for some, this specific reminder is absolutely intolerable. Authenticity is not a path of safety. It does not guarantee admiration or immediate acceptance. In fact, it quite frequently ensures the opposite reaction. To live authentically is to accept that you will be inevitably misunderstood, subject to harsh judgment, and even actively resented. But it also definitively means you will no longer live in a state of servitude to the ever-shifting opinions of others. You will refuse to contort your true self to fit into various illusions. You will not betray your internal compass in exchange for temporary approval. You will stand firmly as you are, even when it makes other people feel profoundly unsettled. And perhaps this is the very reason why authenticity feels so threatening, because it possesses a contagious quality. The authentic self does not only live for its own benefit, it inspires others, consciously or unconsciously, to begin questioning their own adopted masks. and that questioning is invariably the first critical step toward true transformation. This constitutes the silent revolution of authenticity. It effectively destabilizes illusions, triggers envy, and provokes outright hostility. Yet, it simultaneously plants the crucial seed of freedom within the very individuals who are most resistant to it. A human interaction is seldom as straightforward as it appears on the surface. Every conversation, every relationship, every exchange of words or silence carries with it an unseen current of power. Sometimes this current flows gently, almost imperceptibly, and at other times it surges with an undeniable, strong force. Yet, for the majority of the time, these power dynamics remain concealed. They operate in the background, actively shaping behaviors, guiding immediate reactions, and influencing decisions. The unspoken struggle for power is not always centered around dominance in the most obvious interpretation. It revolves around control, influence, the need for validation, and the unacknowledged desire to completely shape the reality of another person. We prefer to believe that relationships are built purely on foundations of love, mutual respect, or shared objectives. But beneath those commendable concepts lie far more subtle underlying motives. One individual actively seeks reassurance of their inherent worth. Another intensely craves constant recognition. A third desires simple obedience. And still, another thrives on maintaining a sense of superiority. These deep needs are not always openly declared. However, they manifest visibly in the ways people interact with one another. When a person suddenly becomes emotionally cold, when affection rapidly shifts to hostility, or when a friend starts to compete rather than offer support, it is frequently because a delicate, invisible power balance has been fundamentally altered. Power dynamics are very rarely perfectly equal. Even within the closest possible relationships, there exists a subtle undercurrent determining who takes the lead and who follows, who provides validation and who actively seeks it, who exerts influence and who is easily influenced. These established roles are capable of changing over the course of time, and when such a change occurs, tension almost always arises. An individual who once felt completely in control may suddenly sense a loss of influence. The person who relied heavily on your weakness might find themselves deeply unsettled when you begin to develop and grow stronger. The individual who flourished due to your dependence may feel intensely threatened when you start to demonstrate independence. These subtle alterations frequently ignite resentment, not solely because of your actions, but because of the symbolic meaning those actions carry, a fundamental rearrangement of the silent hierarchy. Consider the immediate reaction of people when you establish clear personal boundaries. The very moment you draw a line, you disrupt the existing balance. The individual who was benefiting from your previous compliance suddenly sees their sense of control slipping away. Their hostility is not actually about the boundary itself, but about the sudden loss of that unspoken power. Or reflect on how people respond when you achieve success. For some, your achievement acts as a harsh reminder of their own perceived lack, a severe disruption of the unspoken contract that positioned you beneath them. The fundamental nature of the relationship shifts, and the silent power dynamic can no longer be maintained. Even in completely ordinary interactions, these intricate dynamics are actively in play. In a simple conversation, who is the one who interrupts and who patiently listens? In group settings, who naturally commands all the attention and who fades into the background? Within families, whose opinions are always deferred to and whose are routinely dismissed? These patterns may seem insignificant, but they clearly expose the distribution of power that silently governs the relationships. And when one person begins to actively resist, when they step outside of their expected role, it almost always generates friction and conflict. The hidden nature of power dynamics makes them particularly hazardous because they are very rarely openly acknowledged. They are easily misunderstood and misinterpreted. You might mistakenly believe that someone dislikes you for no apparent reason, when in fact they perceive a direct threat to their sense of control. You may think you have disappointed a person with your specific life choices, when the truth is, those choices have revealed to them just how little power they actually hold over you. The hostility you encounter is not a reflection of who you are, but rather a reaction to what your presence disrupts in the hidden, established balance of control. Power does not always equate to obvious authority or outright dominance. Sometimes it manifests as something as subtle as emotional leverage, the capacity to instill guilt in someone, the ability to intentionally withhold affection, or the silent pressure exerted by unstated expectation. An individual might never raise their voice, yet they wield immense influence by threatening to withdraw their presence, by offering approval only when you conformity, or by manipulating the unspoken foundational rules of the connection. When you cease playing along with this game, when you stop providing them with that leverage, the entire structure inevitably collapses. And very few things generate resentment more rapidly than the collapse of a deeply hidden structure of power. To openly recognize these dynamics is to understand that conflict is often not truly about surface-level disagreements. It concerns the deeper, fundamental struggle for influence, the intense fear of losing control, and the insecurity that comes from being overshadowed. People rarely have the honesty to say, "I resent you because you no longer make me feel superior," or "I am angry because I can no longer easily manipulate you." Instead, they choose to frame the issue as a betrayal, a sign of arrogance, an act of selfishness, or a profound disrespect. These specific words merely serve to camouflage the deeper, uncomfortable truth. The power they once held over you has irreversibly slipped away. Yet the innate desire for power is not inherently evil or malicious. It is deeply rooted in basic human nature. People seek a sense of control because they instinctively fear chaos and disorder. They intensely crave influence because it reassures them of their inherent worth. They cling firmly to established hierarchies because it provides them with a feeling of safety within a world full of uncertainty. The major issue arises when these powerful desires are left completely unacknowledged, when they become twisted into silent, unspoken expectations, when they morph into open hostility directed toward anyone who fails to comply with them. You will not always possess the ability to dismantle these complex dynamics, nor can you reliably prevent the deep resentment they inevitably create. But by perceiving them with clarity, you liberate yourself from internal confusion. You stop internalizing the hostility as though it originated from some fundamental flaw within yourself. You begin to understand that a significant portion of what people project onto you is not, in fact, about you at all. It concerns the shifting currents of invisible power, the silent, often unstated hierarchies that actively govern human connections, the extremely fragile sense of control that people are willing to protect at any cost. Human beings do not simply perceive others as they truly are. They instead see themselves being reflected back through the others. Every single interaction becomes a type of mirror, a silent form of revelation exposing hidden truths, unacknowledged wounds, and deeply private desires. What we genuinely admire in other individuals often clearly reveals what we aspire to cultivate within our own selves. What we intensely dislike or despise in others frequently exposes the parts of us we adamantly refuse to face. This is known as the mirror effect, the undeniable truth that the judgments we cast outward are, more often than not, a direct reflection of our own inner world. The mirror effect explains precisely why people can suddenly turn against you without any apparent justification. They are not genuinely reacting to you. They are reacting strongly to what you happen to awaken within their own mind. When you embody specific qualities that they have suppressed within themselves, you instantaneously become the mirror that reveals what they are desperately missing, what they are actively avoiding, or what causes them profound shame. And for many people, that reflection is simply too intolerable to bear. Instead of bravely facing it, they attack the mirror. They criticize. They harbor resentment. They intentionally distance themselves, not because you have harmed them, but because your existence has brought their shadow into sharp focus. Imagine the person who openly mocks your ambition and drive. Underlying their laughter is often the sharp sting of their own unrealized potential. Imagine the individual who cannot tolerate your confidence. Their evident hostility may be an echo of their own deeply buried insecurity. Consider the person who intensely dislikes your freedom. Their anger might originate from the psychological chains of fear and the need for approval that actively bind them. In virtually every instance, the hatred is much less about you and far more about the reflection you involuntarily bring to their conscious surface. This is why the mirror effect can be so profoundly unsettling. It does not permit comforting illusions to remain intact. When you choose to live authentically, when you continue to grow, when you embody traits that others have explicitly denied within themselves, you forcefully strip away the comfort of their self-deception. You are reminding them of the person they could become, or the person they once desperately wished to be, or the person they are secretly afraid they truly are. The reflection you offer becomes too clear, too truthful, too revealing of their inner state. And rather than utilizing that mirror for personal transformation, they may instead choose to metaphorically shatter it by projecting their intense discomfort directly back onto you. However, the mirror effect does not exclusively apply to others. It applies equally to you. The specific people who intensely irritate you, the personality traits you find completely unbearable, the behaviors you condemn with unusual fervor, these may all be crucial signals pointing toward your own unacknowledged shadow. The extreme laziness you despise in another person may, in fact, reveal the part of you that is secretly terrified of rest and stillness. The open arrogance you detest so much might indicate your own buried, unspoken hunger for recognition. The dishonesty you cannot tolerate may reflect your own past moments of silence when you actively refuse to speak your own truth. What you consistently reject in other individuals is very often a direct reflection of what you are rejecting within yourself. To clearly recognize this profound principle is to fully understand the deep truth underlying projection. When an individual projects their insecurities onto you, they are essentially unloading what they are personally unable to face. They may accuse you of being selfish, when it is they who deeply fear being labeled selfish themselves. They call you arrogant, when it is they who secretly long to feel a sense of superiority. They label you a failure, when it is they who feel the sting of failure eating away at their own self-worth. Projection is not always an inherently malicious act. It is often entirely unconscious. But it severely distorts reality, transforming mirrors into perceived enemies and turning reflections into direct targets. This is why self-awareness is so critically essential. If you choose to live in complete ignorance of the mirror effect, you will spend your entire life mistakenly believing that the opinions of others genuinely define you. You will constantly chase approval, live in fear of rejection, and consistently misinterpret hostility as conclusive evidence of your own inadequacy. But when you finally see clearly, you come to understand that the way people treat you is far more about their internal battles than it is about your actual worth. Their genuine admiration is a reflection of their own unclaimed potential. Their intense hatred is a reflection of their own disowned shadow. The mirror effect also provides an explanation for why certain relationships possess a powerful magnetic pull. When someone truly admires you, it is not solely because of who you inherently are, but because you serve as a vivid reminder of their own unlived possibilities. Your courage actively awakens their own dormant courage. Your kindness naturally stirs their own internal compassion. Your personal growth triggers their own deep desire to evolve. In this way, The mirror has the capacity to inspire profound transformation, not just hostility and anger. The reflection you willingly offer can function as a powerful catalyst, strongly urging others to reclaim the vital parts of themselves they have long since abandoned. Yet, not every person chooses the path of growth when directly faced with the mirror. Some choose to resist, some choose to vehemently deny the reflection, and some simply lash out in anger. And consequently, relationships may fracture, trust rapidly dissolves, and open hostility surfaces. The mirror effect ultimately reveals that conflict is rarely about mere surface-level issues. It is about much deeper truths being reflected, truths that the other person is simply not yet emotionally ready to face. The underlying anger is not genuinely about your specific words, your choices, or your very existence. It is about the profound pain of seeing oneself too clearly reflected in another person. To live life with this level of awareness is to carry a different, more resilient type of inner strength. You stop taking every instance of rejection personally. You begin to perceive criticism as mere information rather than a final condemnation. You recognize that envy is not concrete proof of your guilt, but clear evidence of another person's deep, unfulfilled longing. You fully accept that hatred is often merely misdirected self-hatred, cleverly disguised as outward hostility. The mirror effect definitively shows you that human connection is never solely about the surface. It is perpetually about reflection, projection, and the silent, ongoing dialogue that takes place between inner worlds. And so, the mirror effect becomes both a significant challenge and an important invitation. It is a challenge because it means you will frequently be targeted for the truths you awaken in others. It is an invitation because it also signifies that every reaction, whether it is deep admiration or intense hatred, can reveal hidden truths about the individual who is giving it. To perceive others as mirrors is to gain crucial insight into your own self. To perceive yourself as a mirror is to fully understand the invisible, often unspoken reasons why people treat you in the manner that they do. Envy very rarely announces its presence openly. It does not arrive with a bold declaration of confession or an honest admission of one's own weakness. Instead, envy remains skillfully concealed in the silence. It lingers specifically in the subtle pauses between spoken words, in the sudden, noticeable withdrawal of emotional warmth, and in the distinct, subtle shift of energy that clearly signals something has fundamentally changed, even though no one has the courage to name it. Envy stands as one of the most potent yet thoroughly hidden emotions in all human relationships, and because it is so rarely openly voiced, it inevitably becomes dangerous, corrosive, and intensely destructive. Most people will absolutely not tell you directly that they envy you. They will never say, "Your recent success makes me feel profoundly inadequate," or "Your self-confidence is a harsh reminder of what I personally lack." To openly admit to envy is equivalent to admitting an inherent inadequacy, and human pride will absolutely not permit that to happen. So, envy masterfully disguises itself. It hides in silence, cloaks itself in backhanded compliments, manifests as a sudden emotional distance, and breeds hidden resentment. You may not even realize its presence until it erupts into the open, until the previous admiration abruptly shifts into biting criticism, until the long-standing friendship transforms into bitter rivalry, or until support completely degenerates into open sabotage. The silence surrounding envy is deeply deceptive because it frequently attempts to masquerade as mere indifference. You might notice that someone who was once wholeheartedly celebrating your victories no longer applauds with the same enthusiasm, no longer initiates contact as readily, and no longer smiles with the same genuine sincerity. Their silence feels heavy and oppressive, but you cannot pinpoint its origin to any specific act of betrayal. This is because envy matures slowly and quietly, much like a shadow gradually lengthening in the background. It patiently waits for a precise moment of direct comparison, a stark reminder of what they feel they are missing, and in that very moment, its grip tightens even further. What makes envy so fundamentally insidious is that it thrives specifically on closeness and intimacy. Complete strangers may readily admire you, but it is often those individuals who are closest to you who experience the intense sting of comparison most painfully. A good friend, a professional colleague, or even a family member can find themselves silently being consumed by this deep envy. This occurs not because you have actively harmed them, but simply because your forward progress has intensely illuminated their personal stagnation. Your inner light exposes the forgotten corners of their own unfulfilled potential, and rather than using that discomfort as motivation for growth, they choose to retreat into silence, nursing an internal, hidden wound that slowly morphs into quiet hostility. The silence of envy also clearly reveals itself in the skewed way people choose to interpret your actions. Words you spoke with complete innocence are twisted and misconstrued as arrogance. Achievements you earned through significant effort are casually dismissed as mere luck or chance. Boundaries you courageously set for self-respect are framed negatively as overt selfishness. These distortions are not true reflections of your reality, but rather clear evidence of their underlying envy. Envy significantly clouds a person's perception. It causes others to see not who you authentically are, but what they deeply fear they are not. And because envy is so rarely directly addressed, it spreads quietly like a slow-acting poison. Left completely unspoken, it ferments and grows darker. Left unacknowledged, it deepens its hold. People almost never utter the words, "I deeply envy you," but they will often express it through subtle, deliberate acts of sabotage, through undermining, passive-aggressive remarks, or by intentionally withholding critical support precisely when you need it the most. Their silence is anything but neutral. It is heavily charged with deep resentment. It is the specific silence that consistently fails to celebrate your personal growth. The silence that refuses to grant you genuine recognition. The silence that quietly hopes for your eventual failure purely to gain a measure of relief. But envy is not solely an emotion that exists in other people. It undeniably exists within you as well. To attempt to deny this fact is to remain willingly blind to your own internal shadow. There are undeniably times when you too have observed another person's freedom, their beauty, their success, or their courage, and felt a sharp sting of personal inadequacy. You may have never openly admitted it to anyone, but you felt it internally. The silence of envy is not a phenomenon exclusive to your adversaries. It has the potential to quietly creep into your very own heart, and if you choose not to confront it directly, you will inevitably project it onto others, unfairly condemning them for the very positive qualities you secretly wish you had actively cultivated within your own self. The silence of envy serves as a strong reminder of how profoundly human beings possess an innate craving for comparison. People measure their own worth not just by their individual achievements, but also by carefully measuring the achievements of those individuals who are immediately surrounding them. When someone close to them surpasses them in some way, it is often perceived as an active threat to their established identity. It is as if your personal success somehow diminishes their inherent worth. But the truth is that envy is never truly about the other person. It is fundamentally about the mirror. They are simply holding up a reflection of what still remains unlived and undeveloped within their own self. To clearly perceive envy is to fully understand that a large portion of the hostility you inevitably encounter in life is not actually born from your various flaws, but rather it originates from your inherent light. People are not simply irritated by what they perceive as wrong with you. They are often far more deeply unsettled by what is undeniably right with you. They are capable of forgiving weakness and failure, but true strength actively awakens their own deep-seated insecurities. They can tolerate comfortable mediocrity. But genuine excellence exposes their tendency toward avoidance. They can readily accept strict conformity, but bold authenticity powerfully highlights their masks and pretenses. And so, instead of admitting their envy openly, they fall completely silent. And in that heavy silence, deep resentment begins to grow. The silence of envy is dangerous precisely because it remains entirely invisible until the point where it is too late to stop it. You might mistakenly think someone is a supportive ally, only to later discover they were quietly hoping for your complete downfall. You may genuinely believe you are surrounded by loyal friends, only to eventually learn that some of them have been actively competing with you in secret. The unstated nature of envy makes it one of the most potent and destructive forces operating in all human relationships. It steadily erodes essential trust, gradually corrodes true connection, and ultimately transforms what was once admiration into outright animosity. Yet, when you learn to recognize the silence of envy for its true nature, you immediately stop misinterpreting it. You no longer feel compelled to shrink your own self or diminish your achievements just to avoid triggering others. You no longer desperately beg for lengthy explanations when someone suddenly withdraws from your life. You no longer allow another person's emotional coldness to make you question your own inherent worth. Instead, you perceive envy for what it is, the shadow in action. It is not a reflection of your specific failure, but rather a clear reflection of another person's unclaimed, abandoned potential. You come to fully realize that the silence which frequently surrounds your victories is often far more revealing and louder than any applause. For within that specific silence lies the unspoken, yet profound confession of envy that simple words will never fully reveal.